Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Mission Yozakura Family Season 1, Episode 4. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So let's, we get a little bit more with some of the other members of the Yozakura family we learned a little bit about, but let's kind of break it down bit by bit. First and foremost, I want to start off with Taiyo and Mitsumi, obviously her cooking food, and us seeing, it's interesting seeing, like, I guess she handles all cooking duty, because I guess I never crossed my mind who would put the poison in, and it seems like she's the one that does, because she does the cooking, so she includes the poison in the food. It's got to be this weird thing of like, right, this is for the sake of the family that's trying to protect you, and they want this, but it's still got to feel weird. But she's probably been doing this for so long, it's just kind of like whatever, but it's still, that had to probably be awkward. It probably had to be something she had to really get over at one point in time. She probably got over it pretty quickly, considering the nature of everything, but the fact is that she has to like put poison in food. And I love that the only reason why she dumped a whole bunch was Taiyo ended up coming in and being like, oh, how do you put on a bra again? She's like, whatever your indications are, like inclinations are, I will embrace them. He was like, dude, I'm just doing this to like learn how to like, disguising, like working on my disguise work. He's like, why won't you even look me in the eyes? And then it turns into a whole thing when like Kengo shows up dressed like a girl, and now it's like rustling, and then Shinzo shows up and it's like, I guess that's just kind of a married couple thing. And then Kiyashiro comes in looking for his kiss, and then both him and Kengo get like knocked aside across the head. I wonder how often, because he didn't just the Kengo thing I thought was interesting really quickly, because we know that's the outfit he used in episode 2, like when he was there, kind of like suit. I wonder, is that the nurse from the school? We never found out who that was, but the fact is Taiyo didn't think much of it, even though it's like, oh, the nurse isn't here. Either he didn't really register those signs, or that's why I'm like, because he would have said something like, oh, who's this random person? But it's like, I would assume you'd been to the nurse at some point, maybe, but I would assume that is the nurse from his school. I'd assume Kengo like keeps a lot of those disguises. Like, yeah, you never know how they can come in handy. But anyway, staying on Taiyo and Mitsumi, we get a little insight into her duties as the head. Like, we find out a lot of the larger implications of what she's a part of. Like, they handle a lot of rental stuff. Like, oh yeah, like she's like, oh yeah, send back this thing because we're only getting 5% less income than we're supposed to. Like, they had their hands in a lot of pockets. So I guess that's how like the Yozakura is outside of just, I guess it almost works like a mafia in the same vein, like a Yakuza or like a mafia group of just like, right, you've got your hands in so many different pies as sources of income, and you do a lot. So it's just interesting that the missions aren't their only source of income. Like, and Mitsumi handles a lot of paperwork, and it's just like how fastly she goes through stuff. She has to like organize stuff. It's like, it's stuff that's expected of the head of the family. So I also love that she's like, new developments has been Kiyashiro sneaking in divorce papers, but it's like, yeah, make sure you burn all of those. So that was kind of nice insight in that regard, or just kind of seeing more of what Mitsumi, like what duties fall on her as the head. And it's like, once again, just showing how much responsibility she has, because I'm sure for her it's like, I can do this much when everyone else is doing, like, everyone has their part to play and everything, and it's like, as the head, I've got to hold my responsibilities in place while everyone does their part too, because for her it's like, considering like I'm the one that's in danger the most, like this is what I can do and what I have to do, what's expected of me. But also staying on Taiyo, his training has paid off, and he's become a little superhuman to the point that Mitsumi's like, you kind of want to like dial that back, because it's like, the fact of the matter is, a baseball came at him, it didn't even like turn, he caught it, tossed it back at super speed. They're like, yo, we want you to join the baseball team. I thought that was going to be part of the arc of this episode, but it was just further proof from Mitsumi, like, you need to kind of like be careful about it, or people are going to find out. He's like, yo, people are starting to call you a ninja behind your back because your footsteps are so quiet now, which is kind of neat. So there was kind of nice little developments on that front. Next, let's move into Kengo's circumstances. I meant to talk about this last episode, but maybe it wasn't even last episode. It might have been episode 2. I don't remember. I think it might have been last episode. But the whole thing about Kengo being naked all the time, they kind of go into it a little bit, because I figured that might be the reason why he likes being naked. I was like, well, it's, he seems to be very free spirited, so I felt like that plays into his personality. I mean, he's very like lackadaisical, character. So, but the fact is he's very free spirited. But I was like, right. It almost feels like it behoove you professionally because you were like a master of disguise to be naked, because it's like kind of being your true self that ready to like jump into any disguise at any moment. But it's like no, specifically strips, because it's like when he's in disguises it's like, oh, I just want to be like out of anything, so I'm like butt naked all the time, which even Mitsumi's like, don't you have any shame? Like, the fact is, put on some clothes at least around your sister. But he's like, oh, we used to bathe together. He's like, remember, you used to be so adorable. And she's like, back then, and he's like, yeah, you've become a mom now. Which I thought it kind of pissed her off, but it didn't bother her the way I thought it could have been. But like bringing up the mom conversation, that was something we didn't really dive into, but we do see later on Kengo. I think he's seeing Mutsumi, like he's seeing her. Well, I was about to say, I think seeing how responsible she is and how much she's grown, it's like, right, I have to remember. I didn't know if that was kind of implying that later scene of him finally seeing her, like, right, I'm still looking at you as just my little baby sister I always had to hold on to, that, like, your mom, or maybe my mom, our mom, once again, don't know how that situation works, told us. Once again, I'd even thrown out there, that might not even be a mom situation. That might be, like, one of the elder sisters or something, like. Because, like I said, Shion seems like she might be the eldest sister, but I don't... Not Shion, Futaba, but I don't know. That blue-haired person might be, like, the eldest sister, but it could also just as easily be, like, Mitsumi's mom. But either way, I didn't know how to interpret that, whether that's just him seeing her like, oh, you're almost like her now because you've grown so much and changed so much, or is it more of a thing of, all right, like... I've always kept my duty of like, right, like we play our games of hide and seek and stuff, but it's like, right, I was told to always kind of hold out my hand for you, but it's like you kind of don't need that anymore, because I mean, I'm always going to be here to support you, but also I know you have someone else. They are kind of filling that role now in Taiyo. So I feel like there's multiple ways that particular scene could be interpreted, but either way. Basically, the whole thing started because she was trying to get some paperwork from him, but he was just too lazy about it and decides, like, cool, let's play a game of, because she wants to discipline him, so he ends up running off. Taiyo gets distracted, even though Mitsumi's right there. Kengo turning into her, like, threw him for a second. And she has to shut down the whole place. It's called hibernation. I doubt it's specifically made for Kengo. I'm sure it's just a defense mechanism in general. Which I wonder what the circumstances typically are for them activating it. Like, I guess it's like when there's like a massive raid or attack on the house. Because I'm like, to our knowledge, they didn't use it against Kishiro. So, but maybe the hibernation is better for keeping stuff in rather than keeping stuff out. So... I do love that whole sequence too, where they're like, when they go and see everyone, they see Shion, Nano, and Futaba, and then they go into Kiishiro's room, and it's like, yeah, there's not even a bed in there. It's just a chair in the middle of a room, surrounded by every like space on the wall filled with a picture of Mitsumi. So it's like, that's interesting. But I love that we find out the reveal later on, because we saw a smile and it looked like it was Mitsumi, so I was like, oh, so he's in that room pretending to be one of the paintings. I was like, that's pretty genius. And we see it later on as he literally disguises himself as a painting later on too. But what I thought was so interesting and beautiful was the reveal that, like, every time they ran into someone, Shion, Futaba, and Nano, that was him every time. It's like, that's dedication of, like, just screwing with you that much. Just to be there, just to throw you further off his trail. Because the only reason why they didn't check Futaba's room is like, well, they saw Futaba sleeping. It's like, yeah, he would never go in here. It's like, to be fair, they were all, as Nano says later on, it's like they were like checking out the purity of some drugs they stole off a cartel from a job they did last week. But it's like, yeah, it's only like 10% purity. And I think Futaba was like, yeah, basically everyone's on hard times. I'm like, I love that line of dialogue, kind of like, yeah, everyone's struggling business wise and stuff like that, because even the cartel's like, oh, they couldn't even get that purity up to over 10%. So I just thought that was kind of neat. And so ultimately he tried to disguise himself as Taiyo, but I love the Mitsumi thing of being like, no, like, you figured that had to be the case when he went around the corner. It's like, would he really just throw the painting at you and that be that? It's like, yeah, that seemed too easy. But Mitsumi's like, yeah, like, the fact is you messed up. Like, you might be you're phenomenal at examining people and picking up their patterns, but you haven't nailed me and Tayo yet, because the fact is you don't know enough about Tayo's habits. Tayo always opens the door and lets me in through first, which makes you wonder, like, is that a bad habit or is it a good habit? I mean, I think that's just a Tayo thing, but you would think as like a protector in this family, you should always go into a room first, but I don't know if that's like a habit that's going to eventually get broken, but you know, maybe it's not. Like, it's just always kind of like, right, the leader, the head of the family needs to always go in first. But once again, that the way she framed it, it's like, doesn't seem like anyone, like, probably doesn't really matter. It's just, it matters in the context of this situation, just being like, that's how Tayo is to Mutsumi, like, she should always go in first, like, you know, chivalrous type of thing. I don't even think that's like, I don't know if that's just a Tayo thing in general, or whether that's like something he's adopted specifically since becoming a part of the Yozakura family. Like I said, it was kind of nice, because the end result is too that Kengo is like, yo, you don't have to be like so formal, like drop all the formalities when you talk to me. He's like, yeah, but you're like my big bro. But it's like, yeah, but I'm only like a year older than you. It's kind of creepy. So they ended up bonding a little bit more. I mean, they had a decent enough relationship, but this situation brought them closer, and you can tell it made Mutsumi happy. Like, right, this game of hide and seek, you know, there was benefits to it in the long run, so it all worked out. And then we have Shinzo on his own mission, which seeing him outside of his trash can was kind of interesting. I was like, oh, I guess when it's on missions, he doesn't really use it unless he absolutely has to, unless like the situation calls for it. I guess because like in this mission, it was calling for stealth because he was trying to retrieve some currency, like the original like plate for printing money, because this group is using it for counterfeiting. And I love that he's like, yeah, it's a low level. And then Tayo was like, wait, that's a low level mission? Seems pretty much a big deal. But yeah, it's like, you don't really, because Shinzo uses like the garbage can as a way of kind of like hiding himself, because he can be very shy and meekish in a lot of ways. And the mission doesn't go the way Shinzo thought it would, and he ends up using all his weapons. He got past some stuff. It was also neat too, kind of obviously seeing him use some of Shinzo's tech, like the whole it has X-ray vision and all that, like those goggles or glasses he used. But he kind of fell into a trap. A whole bunch of guards showed up, and then he calls the house, which apparently they have a very specific landline for that stuff, and it has a video call and everything. And then we saw Shinzo. We find out that yes, he's a weapon expert, and he's so good, but without a weapon, he turns into kind of a wimp, which is so interesting. Because like up until now, I was like, once again, we're kind of learning about the flaws and quirks of each of these characters, and that's his. Just like we're learning, like Kengo is like very lackadaisical. I keep butchering that word. I'm still not saying it right, I'm sure, but you know what I'm trying to say. He's super lazy and got that very carefree attitude. But yeah, Shinzo is this way, and it's up to Tayo to bring in a little kind of weapon care package, but also kind of handle things himself. And we get to see like him on his kind of on an unofficial rescue mission. Well, not even unofficial, pure rescue mission, where he showcases what he's learned, you know, how to deal with someone who's behind you that's armed, and just seeing him take down some guys on his own, meeting up with Shinzo, hooking him up with a gun, and then Shinzo just got like a gun. And I love that there's that, to calm him down, Mutsumi was telling this story. It was almost like a twisted fairy tale, which I'm almost like, she was like a grandfather that, what was it, that kind of loved battle, and there was like a grandma that was like combat obsessed to like went to like a place to commit a massacre. And it's like, I don't know if that's any correlation to them in any shape or form, but we do see, like, get bits and pieces of that story. It feels like, I don't know if that's just something she made up. I think it's just supposed to play into like, right, like the only calming story for Shinzo is like a battle-ridden, blood-soaked story or something like that. But it feels like almost like that could be like a story that Mutsumi herself heard. Like that might be kind of like a legend that's passed down. I don't know if that's like a grandparent situation on her part or what. Maybe that had something to do with like one of the previous like Yozakura generations. I don't know. Like maybe like 2 before herself. I don't know. Like in that case being like, that could be about 8, the 8th generation maybe. We haven't really explored that at all. I kind of got some spoilers. I haven't looked at anything, but I did get glimpses of like some other family stuff, but once again, I don't have the context for it. I was just, because I was trying to memorize the characters' names, because it takes a while to get adjusted to characters' names, so I was looking up the characters' name, and I saw some other generation stuff. Like I said, I didn't look into it, but because what I thought was interesting, and I won't specify because I was like, that'd be a spoiler, but it wasn't the way it was laid out on the page. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I wouldn't have expected that direction of things, but once again, I don't have context, and I didn't really, to avoid spoilers, I didn't look too deep. I caught a glimpse of it, like, oh nope, didn't want any spoilers. But anyway, Shinzo proves himself to be a badass, just kind of taking everyone down. I don't know if he's killing everyone or not, because it is a shonen thing. They're not going to make it as bloody, except in certain. I don't know if that's like I don't know if even the manga does that. I mean, I'm sure there's limitations in like how much blood you can display, and because I mean, shonen can get bloody, but it just depends. I guess it just depends on like how the rating system works and stuff like that for like manga, and then like how how like a PG-13 you get 1 F, rating wise, like here in the US. So I don't know how that works. Like, are you only allowed to show a certain amount of blood, and they had to pick the very specific spots where they included blood, or whether that's supposed to just mean like Shinzo just took everyone down without killing them? Because we saw people getting shot at and shot up, and him disarming them. It's like, yeah, he's a completely different person when he's in the zone. But then like the guy shoots Taiyo in the leg, and it's up to Shinzo to drop his gun, but it's like, yeah, getting rid of his weapons. Not like this guy knows, but yeah, getting rid of his weapons makes him weak. But in that moment, Taiyo ends up throwing him a fork. It's like, right, it might not seem like much, but anything that fits comfortably in Shinzo's hand can make him feel like it's anything that fits comfortably can be used as a weapon. It's not just he turned that fork into a weapon, literally threw it, and it like pierced the sniper rifle the guy was using, and destroyed it. Picked up the gun and blew the guy away. So ultimately, the mission was a success. I even love Taiyo commenting on, yeah, isn't that gun out of bullets? And Shinzo's like, yeah, just don't remind me, because I'm not trying to focus on that fact. But he was kind of, he's like, yeah, I was kind of careless in this situation, and yeah, you helped me, and it's like, yeah, as your big bro, like, let me kind of help out in this regard. I was like, oh, that's really sweet. But he's like, yeah, I want to try and get stronger too, so that like I'm not such a weakling without any weapons, that I'm able to kind of handle that a little bit better. Feels like you should always keep some secret weapon on you at all times. A weapon that you don't use unless it's absolutely necessary, but just so you feel comfortable. To be fair, he was outnumbered, and so he ended up burning through more weapons than he thought he would need to. So that could be a thing if he probably does keep something on him, but he had to use it also. But then we also get the very ending of the episode, where we get teased to one of the people we saw in the intro. We don't know what his deal is, but definitely seems scary, because he's like, hey, you give me the information I want, I'll only break the bones in your limbs. And the guy wouldn't. He's like, okay, cool. So I guess beat the dude to death with a hammer. And it seems like his next target is Taiyo, because he was specifically asking who hired them, because Shinzo did learn that there was someone higher up in this like group, this gang, like, or whatever. They were responding to someone else like set up the whole counterfeiting situation for them. So we never found out who that was. It seems like he's after the same person. So maybe he's only after Taiyo now, because it's like, well, you're connected to this mission. Like, why go after Taiyo and not Shinzo, since Shinzo directly dealt with this? So we'll ultimately have to wait to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.